thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Hopefully that camera doesn't fall over. If it does, it does. Eddie, give me a mic check. Count to 10, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. EDDIEVALERO.
Like the gas station.
Young Men's Initiative. So I'll start off with who you are, why you got involved, your background, and we'll go into your mission, if that's okay.
Yeah.
This is just a conversation. It's nothing, no trigonometry or anything like that. Good morning, Eddie. Welcome. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Eddie Valero with Young Men's Initiative. I recently ran across you and your mission about a month ago, and I was very intrigued. Young Men's Initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about the initiative?
Yes, so Young Men's Initiative is developed in order to encourage young men, especially from fatherless homes, to give them that sense of empowerment, that sense of opportunity that is often neglected in the home when the father is not present. And so we started this organization knowing that there was a lack of male involvement, a lack of male achievement in our schools. And so that is one way in which we try to combat the issue, was to provide opportunities for our young men to succeed through leadership, unity, and service, with the overall mission of developing the next generation of courageous, motivated, and successful young men throughout the Central Valley.
That's wonderful. What brought you to this mission? When did it happen? What brought you there? Was it just one day it triggered, or was it something that led up to it?
So I actually was living in New York for 10 years and decided that it was time for me to come back home after spending 10 years as an undergrad and graduate work out on the East Coast. And so I got here, and once I came back home, I ran for school board, and I was elected on the board in 2012, and then decided that I would make it a mission for me to find an issue in the community that was kind of hurting. And so in addition to that, I would attend scholarship nights, award nights, homecoming nights, and noticed that there were double-digit females to single-digit males either receiving awards or being recognized. And so then it wasn't to spotlight gender inequity. The question for me was, why weren't male involved? Why weren't male getting scholarships? Why were there only few males running for homecoming royalty? And so I decided that I would find out the data, and went to the superintendent and I said, you know what, I want all this information, the 4-year college going rate, the 2-year college going rate, the A through G completion rate. Can you please give me that information disaggregated by gender? And sure enough, there was a disproportionate amount of females over males achieving in Orosi Joint Unified School District. So I decided, you know what, well, we need to do something about that. And that's when we started Young Men's Initiative to really provide work in those silos that were kind of struggling. And then, as you know, it started off as a small 10 group, and then it increased to about 15, 20. And so I noticed that young men were hungry to really just try harder, but because they weren't given the resources, that's why YMI became such a pivotal force in the community, because we were really finding a need and being able to tackle it with services and resources for all of our young men.
Now, what brought you to going out and looking for a mission? Did you come from a fatherless home, or what brought you to, I need to do something more than just sit on the board and however you made money at the time? Not that I'm saying that this is why you are in it, but a lot of people, a lot of listeners are just doing their routine. It was me over 5 years ago, going to work, coming home, going to work, coming home. What brought you to the point where you felt like you needed to do something more?
Well, as a man of faith, I believe that God really put the puzzle pieces together, just because of the fact that I never thought that I would be working with young men, especially fatherless young men, in terms of leadership development. And so for me, I just felt that God put me in a position where I would need to help these kind of young men. Because for me, at least, I had a nuclear family. I had my father, I had my mother, my brothers. I was a scholarship boy, so I was always given the spotlight. When I was in high school, I went off to Yale in between my sophomore and junior year of high school. I took classes at Yale. I took 4 classes of community college. I took a summer program at UCLA. All this while I was in high school, and I was able to graduate a year early. So for me, working with a different type of population group, you would never think that would be the case. But I just felt that as I reflect back and think about what brought me here was to see that all of my friends or people that I hung out with who stayed in Orosi and really struggled, but also had to do hard work. And so many times for me, it was always brushing the left, brushing to the right, because it was always about me. But I noticed that coming back home, now I'm working with a group that was often always not given the spotlight or was pushed to the side while I was out in the front representing the school as school board representative. So it's changed perspective, meaning coming back home to really work with those that need it now more than ever. And I've been humbled by that, and I've been encouraged by that. And being on the board has added to that excitement of all the changes that we're making for our community and bettering our community as a result.
Eddie, how long have you been doing this?
Since 2012, so 2013 got the idea. And so it's been about 5-6 years, and we've now expanded into Visalia Unified and Avenel High School as well.
Across the valley.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes.
Good for you.
Yes.
What are some of the values, the skills that are lacking from these kids, these young adults that aren't there when their parents don't have that nuclear family?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's the life skills. So life skills that whether it be changing a tire, whether it be opening up a bank account, whether it be just finding jobs through a resume. So I think we've lost a lot of that since we've kind of education has changed and evolved. But at the same time, I can see where education is now bringing those back with college and career readiness skills and stuff. But at the same time, I feel that when there is no father present in the home, we're lacking that ability of leadership. We're lacking that ability of being able to go home and provide for the family because of the negativity or not having the father in the home. So for me, at least, it's about bridging and building connections among young men that don't have fathers or limited father access in the home, because then we fill the silos of that emptiness with the brotherhood experience. So the student may not have the father, but he can cultivate a brother in order to create a brotherhood experience.
I see. The programs that you have going on?
Yes.
What did it start off like, and how has it evolved?
So initially, when we first started back 5 years ago, we would meet in the classroom at the high school or to step up our after school program building, and it would be usually for about 4 hours on a Saturday, one Saturday a month. And that garnered a lot of interest from students, just because we would do like leadership training, we would do activities, we would take traveling, we would travel to different places and bring in guest speakers and then create a community service project. And so it started off there as a small group of about 13. And then we slowly evolved into about 15 to 20. Then we moved to a local pizza parlor, my cousin's pizza parlor, Why My Pizza Planet. And so we met there for a few sessions, and then finally, actually, we were able to purchase a building located right across the street from the high school, which has now become our incubator. So it's the YMI campus, an incubator for culinary arts, leadership development, and business entrepreneurship. And so the young men have worked the front, earning income, as well as providing hospitality and customer service, and just kind of just management of the place. And so that has given them the opportunity to learn what the service industry is like, and the restaurant business as well. So those experiences have really developed Cutler Roasty for the better. The ones in Avenel and Visalia, those do not have an actual physical location, but we do meet on campus or at a specific location in the community where we then invest by having meals there. And then eventually the goal is to have some type of incubator both at Avenel and Visalia.
And your entrepreneurship too, that was part of your...
Yes, so entrepreneurship is something that is combined with the work that we do with Young Men's Initiative.
That could be probably utilized everywhere, entrepreneurship.
Yes, and I say that because the communities that I often work with don't have the job opportunities or the plethora of resources for the youth, so we have to create them ourselves. Just because I've had conversations with like the youth in Avenel who say, you know what, I can't find a job, or we're limited in terms of what we can do, and there are not enough job opportunities for the kids. As well as Orosi, that was one issue before we even started the incubator, was because of the fact that many of the kids would say, students I should say, would say, there's not much to do in Orosi, and so we want to find employment because we have to pay for senior grad night, we have to pay for this or that, or clothes for school. And so it's about building those partnerships with different agencies, so that way we are the bridge in order to get those students the resources that they deserve and they need.
And you develop kids to students that have skills inside of them. I firmly believe each person has a set of skills they're born with, they're blessed with, that's inside of them, waiting to come out, waiting for the trigger for them to spark.
Yes.
I'm sure you see that with a lot of your students.
Yes. And actually, I can name a project that we did a few years ago that was with Peña's Disposal and the city of Dinuba. So the city of Dinuba recently had to change their trash bins from 2 kind of divider bin to just 1 each. And so we decided, they contacted Young Men's Initiative and they said, you know what, would you be willing to do this as a community service project with kind of at the end being able to provide some sort of stipend or monetary compensation for the students? And so we took on that initiative. And so the boys would wake up by like 5 in the morning to be there on site at 6 o'clock, picking up bins, delivering bins. This was a project that should have taken at least 3 months. We did it in about 2 months and a half. So, and the city of Dinuba, as well as Peña's Disposal, were so amazed with the work that the boys did in order to get this project done in an effective and efficient manner. And so they contributed $10,000. And so each student went home with about $600 that summer in order to provide for school clothes or school supplies or to pay bills for the home.
Wow, that's good work on your part and the boys' part on everyone involved.
Yes.
Wow. Now, I was looking at your webpage. I noticed you take the boys out, you take the students out. I saw you were up at maybe Shaver Lake.
Yes.
So it's also beneficial to get the kids out of their environment, because once you get out of their environment, then you're able to kind of put some new ideas and thoughts into their head. Are you noticing that when they get back to their house, they're changing their environment at their house?
Yep. So the reason why we even started the incubator initially as well is because of our prior trip to Los Angeles. And so I'm one in that whenever we take trips, they're not only fun, but they're educational, and they allow us to come back with something anew. And so, for example, when we went to Los Angeles, we stayed at the Frank Sinatra Mansion for 4 days. We then visited the Homeboy Industries, the organization that works with formerly incarcerated adults, and their building has a bakery, has an embroidery company, has, you name it. It's a 2-story building with amazing resources and services for the community. And then we also went to the Dream Center, where we learned about the Dream Center operations, and in addition to that, did a community service by going to a government housing complex and hanging out with students in that complex. And so those are the ideas that students will then develop and then bring back home in order to spark change or spark innovation in a community that needs it now more than ever. So that's something that I tend to work on and work with. For example, Avenal, the YMI Avenal program will be going to Los Angeles and doing something similar as well. And we received funds from the wonderful company to actually provide for the trip and in a startup fund in order for us to then, once we come back from Los Angeles, actually work on an incubator project for that community as well.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. When you're talking about your incubator out in Orosi and how you're doing the food preparation service, I was thinking of Father Gregory Boyle and
Yes.
Homeboy Industries and what he's doing on a larger scale, but you're on a very, very smaller scale. But there's so much room for growth in what you're doing in this area, because this area is very large, and we're kind of by ourselves out here in the middle of the San Joaquin Valley. We're north of Los Angeles, south of San Francisco. We're our own community. We don't get resources from those two large metropolises. So there's much room for growth, but the population out here is growing. Mm-hmm. So we have to be proactive with our younger generations, because if we become reactive, then it's never good. It's like we need to not attack, but we need to address any potential situation before it gets where the kids or students feel like they're helpless. They're out in the world and they're supposed to be on their own and they lack the skills. And what I see that you're doing out in Orosi, and I see you're growing in Visalia, and we hear you're growing in Avenal, it just confirms that you're doing good work. And I just want to thank you for that and being there for the community and these boys.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Now, bringing it back to that moment that you had that spark that you felt like you had to do something. I'm imagining that you felt like you had to do something, but you had no resources. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel a lot of people out there want to do something, maybe something large on a scale like yours, like, hey, I'm from a population that is underserved. I feel like I want to help, I want to contribute, I want to give back because I see how it's affecting them. Talk about your mindset and how you just started on something like that without having is it going to work? Was that even in your mind? Just how you started, and tell us about the initial rollout.
Yeah. So for me, going back to, as I mentioned, being a man of faith and allowing God to provide those provisions for me, I just said, you know what, this is an area of need. And I know that God's going to fill it if I keep on moving forward and I keep on doing the work that is needed in community. And as I mentioned, I had less than $100 in my bank account when I came back from New York, but I felt that I needed to be back for a reason. And that was to improve the lives of our young men and encourage them to seek the opportunities and the resources that I was given, but maybe not so much because they were not privy to that or they were not given that spotlight. And so for me, at least, like I said, as long as you're doing great work and as long as the vision and the mission is there, then people will follow and people will see the work that you're doing, and they will invest or they will push you forward or they will say, you know what, how can I help? And those are the resources in the community and the people that you will surround yourself with in order to make that mission and that vision succeed. And then, so for example, for me, when we purchased that property across the street from the high school, I had, like I said, less than $100 in my bank account. But through the generous support of my parents, as well as community service organizations around town, as well as a few agencies willing to invest, we made this the vision and mission, and we ran with it. And then obviously bigger organizations that are not really involved in Cutlerosi, like the California Endowment and all these other major corporations that really invest in bigger cities, don't necessarily invest in smaller cities. But for me, and that was the case when I started reaching out to areas to big donors in or and around Fresno, and they would say, you know what, not right now because it's a bit iffy, or you're in Cutler Rossi and we only invest in major cities and communities and want to see them thrive first. And obviously, because the bigger population is the bigger funding resources where you want to contribute. But I kept on kind of moving forward regardless and saying, you know what, okay, if I don't have the funds, I'm going to continue to do what is in my heart to improve community. And then as a result, people started noticing, and then other individuals and corporations, no, I wouldn't say corporations, but I would just say major donors, individual donors, or organizations like the California Endowment, then began to see and notice, wow, something is happening in Cutler Rossi and it's changing the face of rural communities in rural California. And sure enough, I even had a reporter from the New York Times come in and she came in for like 3 days at the beginning of the story, kind of hung out with the boys, and we then she came back again at the end of her story to kind of wrap everything up. She sent a photographer from the East Coast, and so it became a major news story that was then published, because she circulated the article, and it was then published in the Christian Science Monitor, because they were doing a segment on leadership. And come to find out that Nelson Mandela, when he was in prison, the only material that he had access to was the Christian Science Monitor. So it just goes to show kind of those connections, the involvement, and just the work that we're trying to do to create an anti-gang and building a culture of excellence and support and initiative and brotherhood in communities that are often neglected by the various resources that are meant to help the students as well.
Because that gang lifestyle is right there. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it's a default mechanism. If a student, that could be male or female, doesn't get going off in the right direction, on the right foot, there's that lifestyle or another lifestyle, substance abuse lifestyle, is right there to pick them up, and very easy at someone that's young of age.
Yeah, and another thing, and like I say, it's just connecting the dots and putting the puzzle pieces together. So for example, just last week, we helped out at a Christmas tree auction in Visalia. And so several nonprofits were out auctioning their trees, but then we also had food vendors, and YMI was one of the food vendors. And right next to us was a food vendor and a Christmas tree auction, and the organization was My Father's House out in Visalia, which is a rehabilitation in-house. They have several homes in the area, and men who have suffered from either substance abuse, drug abuse, have access to go into the home. Well, that is one of the phases that we're trying to do with the duplex that we have right across right next door to the cafe, because that property came with the house, a duplex, and a large lot. Mm-hmm. And so for us, our next phase, or my next phase, has always been to create a transition home for young men in the ages of 18 to 25. Mm-hmm. So again, now I'm going to have a meeting with the director of our My Father's House to see how we can support each other and help build the new phase for the YMI experience.
And like you said, it's making those connections from already organizations that are doing it to organizations that are large, not in the area, like Homeboy Industries down south. Great model to emulate. Yeah. To starting new ones on little rural communities out in Avenal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's great. How can people find you, and if this resonates with anyone, how could they help you?
Yes, so our website is www.ymicampus.com. So Y as in young, M as in men's, and then I as in initiative, and then campus.com. So ymicampus.com. Or you can reach us via our phone, which is 559-528-4700. 528-4700. We also have a Facebook, so it's facebook.com/YMI Group. YMI Group as in GROUP. And then we also have an Instagram as well, the YMI Campus. And so you can look us up on all those areas to see the great work that we're doing for all of our communities across the region.
Eddie, thank you so much for coming out and sharing your vision with everyone here.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. You're very welcome.
Thank you.